Welcome to episode 3 of Optimal Equestrian. Today I'm looking at the book Mind Gym by Gary Mack. I first got this book in college when I took a sports psychology class. This was one of our required readings for the class. It's probably one of the most reread books that I own, and it's a very easy read and very entertaining. I found it interesting that a lot of these tactics my horse trainer growing up had taught me when I was preparing for horse shows or at a horse show, but I'm not sure how prevalent they are in the rest of the horse world, so hopefully you can either find some new tricks or fine-tune the ones that you do have. So Gary Mack, the author, was a leading sports psychology consultant and counselor who worked with professional athletes in the NBA, NFL, NHL, WNBA, and the MLB. And he talks a lot about once you reach a certain level of competency in your sport, the mental skills become as important to performance as the physical skills, if not more so. So this book gives you tons of quotes and sports stories of top athletes. It gives you details about the characteristics of high performers, but also gives you tools to increase your mental game. I'm going to focus this podcast on the actionable items that you can use, but if you're interested in the psychology of athletes or qualities that they have, then this is a must-read book. One of the first things we need to learn to do is managing pressure. Pressure is interpreted in the brain differently by everyone, and the human body is going to react to pressure and stress. Your heart's going to beat faster, your breathing's going to quicken, and pressure will create tension in your body. And as we all know, tension is very counterproductive for riding, no matter what your discipline or sport is. So pressure will either cause you to perform better or perform worse. So we need to learn to view pressure as a challenge to meet rather than a threat of defeat. So the first thing you need to do is think back to a time when you were under pressure, but you broke through that and the pressure actually helped your performance instead of hinder it. So what were you doing and feeling and saying to yourself? What was your routine for the day? Were you excited or anxious? What was your horse doing? And if you can't think of a time when this has happened, then you're just going to have to go out and start experimenting, going to horse shows, going to new environments, and just putting yourself out there. But keep a journal of those things and reflect back on them on what did and did not work. One of the paradoxes of sport is that the fear of failure actually makes failure more likely. You shouldn't be feeling fear. You have to trust that the work has been done to get you to that point, and you have to trust the preparation, all those hours in the saddle, that you know your test, know your course and where you're going, and just focus on the here and now. Stop focusing on outcomes. You just have to be, what do I need to do now, and enjoy the ride and your performance. Another problem he talks a lot about is when you become anxious and emotionally charged, most people start rushing around. So they're speeding up and getting ahead of themselves, but the more you hurry, the worse you're going to perform, and then the worse you perform, the more you want to hurry, and it's just this endless cycle. He talks about this sign he saw one time that said, the first rule of holes. When you find yourself in a hole, the first rule is to stop digging. So does this apply to horses? I certainly think so. When you're rushing and panicking around, it's going to make your horse panic, and they're going to start having behavior issues and act up, and they're just not going to be on their game. So you need to call a mental timeout, gather yourself, and figure out what you need to do right now in this moment to bring yourself and your horse down, and what tasks do you actually need to be doing. So other than just taking a moment and breathing, some things that he says you can do is some athletes find a word or saying or an image, like think of a plate, like at the beach or something, that relaxes you. And you can, in these moments of stress, just repeat that word or saying or think about that place and all the sights and sounds and smells, and just bring yourself back down, calm, control your heart rate and your breathing. Another thing you can do is box breathing, or any really pattern of breathing. It just slows your breathing down, but it also turns your focus inward instead of the external threat that is causing all the stress. So you're using your breathing as a way to focus your energy and it's going to help you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So if you don't know about box breathing, it's breathing in 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds, out 4 seconds, hold 4 seconds. And then you just repeat that over and over. But really just any calm breathing pattern where you're focusing there will do the same kind of thing. If you're feeling tension or stress in your body, you can actually relax those muscles by tensing them up more. So he says to tense, like say your shoulders are tight, you're going to pull those up and hold it and tense it up for 5 to 10 seconds. And then once you relax, it will relax those muscles, relax your body. That way, once your body's relaxed, then you can relax your mind. So those are some little tips that you can try on managing pressure. Test them out and see what works for you and what doesn't. Some of the rest of the tools that we discussed today will also help manage fear and pressure, because a lot of the fear and pressure comes from feeling prepared and your routines and the thoughts that you have while you're doing the task. So the next thing he talks about is knowing your numbers. So if you think of a graph with an upside down U on it, the horizontal line will represent stress and arousal versus the vertical line represents performance. So when it starts out, when you have low stress and arousal, the performance is very low also. Well, as you go up, there's going to be a peak there. And at the top of the peak, that's the number you need to figure out how to get there, when it's starting and when it's ending. Because once it ends, then performance is going to start going down. So this is also where your experimenting and journaling is going to come in handy. And tweak those things. Look back. You may need to figure out what your optimal heart rate is, what your optimal sleep is. Maybe you're riding multiple horses, what you're doing in between those horses, the food that you're eating. All these things can affect how you're going to feel and perform on show day. So you need to create a routine that brings out the best in you, but you also need to know these numbers for your horse. So maybe you need to figure out how much energy they need and you need to bring that up or down. This goes back to our horsemanship, being able to manipulate that. And so maybe you're going to do a lot of transitions to bring them up. Or maybe my thoroughbred, when I took him to shows, once I got to the showgrounds, I immediately had to take him on a walk through the entire facility. Otherwise, he was just a ball of energy that he just didn't know his surroundings, what was going on, and it just got worse and worse where he would get loose and run around. And so it just saved me a lot of time and energy just taking him for a walk, letting him see the environment as soon as we got there, and then he would be happy to settle into his stall and just eat hay. But you need to know this also for your warm-up. So maybe you need transitions. Maybe you go for a long hack before you warm up. And then you need to know this for yourself. So listen to music, but you may need low energy music because you're too anxious and nervous. And so you need to bring your own energy down. Or maybe you need high energy. Maybe you find a quiet arena to go into versus the busy show ring. All those things are going to need to be manipulated, and they're going to be different for each horse and each person. So keep a journal, figure out what works, what doesn't. Can you make it a little bit better? And if you're riding a lot of horses in a show day, you need to be able to recover in between. And I often need to look at my next test. So whenever I'm riding multiple dressage tests, I study them all before, but when I get there, I'm focused on that first test. So then in between, I need to go back and revisit my next test and get that one on my mind. And I've just focused on each individual test. And oftentimes I've been at shows where they're like, oh, you can just go in right now and do your next test. And I said, no, I'm going to need a few minutes because you don't have to ride until that actual time that you're supposed to be in the arena. Yeah, they may not like it, but I need that time to be able to perform best for my horse so that I'm not stressed and I know where I'm going. So yeah, figure out what is the best routine and diet and energy level for you and your horse, and figure out how to manipulate that. Keep a journal, tweak it, repeat, until you get your absolute best out of you and your horse. The next step that he talks a lot about is visualization. So I was taught as soon as I started showing that you can visualize your dressage test or your jumping round. So my trainer would tell me at night when you're going to sleep, just sit there, close your eyes, like find a quiet place, and imagine going down the center line, going through your whole test, but in real time. Don't just say, oh, X, halt to Lucy, turn left, and don't just go through quick. Actually envision yourself riding it. What is your horse going to be doing? What are their normal things? How do you keep them on the center line? How do you ask for the canter transition or the halt transition? And just imagine everything to the minute detail for a perfect test that you're going to ride. I, again, love this because this is something that we can drill over and over and over without having to make your horse actually do the test or jump all the jumps. And that's a rare thing that we can do in the equestrian world is drill like other sports. This could also help with memorizing your test. Say you do mess up. If you go through this visualization, we'll be able to get back on track a lot easier if you have gone through that test in your mind slowly, step by step. And hopefully that'll help you keep your stress under control. So most successful people that we're going to study will see the vision that they want for their future in vivid color. Even if other people doubt them, which they often will, it's said that extraordinary people live their lives backwards. So they create a future and then they live into it. They figure out how to get to that point. So he talks about this acronym ACT. So A stands for accepting your present state. C stands for creating your desired state. And T is taking action through goal setting. So he talks a lot about goal setting. And this is one of those things that a lot of people have heard of. Everyone just learned about SMART goals. I feel like I learned about that in high school and college, but I've never really applied it and sat down and done it. And it's kind of like my diet. Everyone knows what you're supposed to be eating and not eating. But once you actually start applying that, you're going to see the results. So I wonder if goal setting is often like one of those things. So it seems a little bit trivial, but just give it 100% effort and see what happens. All high achievers use it, and you should consider it too. So you're going to basically reverse engineer what your end goal is and take that out into all these different small steps, all the way down to short-term or even daily goals. So you say you want to ride at the Olympics. Okay, how would you get to the Olympics? Well, you have to be the best rider for your country at the highest level. So you're going to be working all the way through the levels. But those people have to become competent horse riders and caretakers. And you have to be able to see distances and sit the trot and all these different things. So you're going to work backwards. And how do you get all those skills that they have? And what can you do, all the way down to what can you do today to get you closer to that goal? But you just need to seek progress rather than perfection. So if you don't know about SMART goals is an acronym. It stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So once you reverse engineer your goals from where you want to be to how you get there, you need to start doing this for daily or short-term goals. So you're going to start these SMART goals for maybe you do it just for today, a short term, a month, a year, and work it out that way. A lot of the people that we're going to study will be great examples of these goals and visualization. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger really talks about how he visualized the entire life that he wanted to the minute detail. But also Phelps would visualize his races when he went to sleep at night and when he woke up every single day. He visualized actually swimming the races and winning the gold and how everything would be feeling and smelling. And we'll go into more of that on those episodes, but it's just really important that what your mind sees, your body can actually achieve. So turning to the mind, he also talks a lot about controlling your thoughts. So your thoughts will dictate your actions. He says thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, habits become character, and character becomes your destiny. So you really have to know how you can control your thoughts because it will dictate your actions and performance. So how can we do this? The first thing you need to do is know that you can only control yourself. Gary says, in sports as in life, your future and success depend upon many things, but mostly they depend upon you. You have the responsibility to shape your life. You are the person who pushes yourself forward or holds yourself back. The power to succeed or fail is yours alone. So you can only control yourself. You can't control how the judge scores you, how other people perform. You can't really even control how your horse is. You can just control your routine and your thoughts and know that you did all the work that you needed to perform well that day. And the rest is out of your hands. I've recently read a book on cognitive behavior therapy. And one of the biggest things that I took away from it is that you can choose not to be angry or annoyed. I've struggled a lot with feelings of anger coming up, and I get annoyed really easily, and road rage. And this simple idea that your emotions are a choice has been a game changer. So once I feel that feeling coming up, if I'm in traffic and I'm angry, being aware of that and just saying, okay, that's a feeling that's not useful to me and it doesn't feel good, and I'm just going to let that go. It sounds super easy, but it kind of is. It just takes awareness, and it took me a few times to get good at it, and it's something I still kind of work on, but as soon as I feel those feelings, and being angry doesn't feel good. You may think that it does, and that letting it out and screaming at someone driving by feels good. It doesn't. It feels so much better just to be happy. And so just recognizing that thought pattern will change your thoughts, which will change your actions pretty much immediately. Gary has another quote. He says, one of the great powers we have is the power to choose. How you choose to look at an event is going to affect how you feel and how you perform. Too often, people play the blame game. Successful people take responsibility for themselves and their game. They understand that it's not the event, but how they respond to it that's most important. So basically, how I respond to those emotions says a lot, and it's going to say a lot when it comes to your performance too. You can't blame other people because they did better than you. You just have to say, this is what I failed on today. This is how I can become successful next time, and just learn from it and just stay positive and take responsibility for yourself. Another thought pattern he talks a lot about is negativity. You cannot let negativity creep in, and most successful people are pretty positive and have a positive attitude. He says positive attitude won't always work, but a negative attitude almost always does. So when you're riding, think about the good things that your horse is doing and ignore the bad. It kind of goes back to Buck Brannaman. Once you start ignoring that bad behavior, it'll just kind of disappear. Also, with people that you surround yourself with, you need to protect your mind. If negative people are around you, I try to get away from them. Or if you can't get away, then if they're saying they're complaining about something, show them the positive side of it. Flip it around. There's always a positive side to everything, whether it's learning from something or just trying to see how lucky you are. Usually, if people are being negative and I try to show them the positive spin, they're either going to stop complaining to you or they're going to take it somewhere else. Either way, it's not in your face anymore. So when you do lose, just accept it and say, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time to make sure that success is inevitable? This can also come into effect when you're writing. So instead of saying the don'ts, you need to say what you do want to happen. So instead of saying don't drift to the left, say we're going to jump in the middle of this jump. And you just need to focus on what needs to be done now in a positive manner. You can't be worried also about the past jump and knocking that rail down or what place you're going to get at the end. Just execute the now. Say in your mind what you want to happen. The final thing when it comes to your thoughts and mindset is you have to recognize your strengths and weaknesses. You can't avoid your weaknesses. You need to make a plan to turn them into your strengths. So never resting on your laurels. Don't stop trying to learn and doing the work that you don't want to do. What's the saying? The magic that you're looking for is in the work that you don't want to do. When I had started with this whole rehab with my horse, it's a lot of lunging and groundwork. And I had always been told that I was good at lunging, but then my trainer was like, nope, you need to work on your body language and communicating with your horse. And I just didn't like it. I didn't find joy in it. But after a year of doing it, I now am so much better at it. He's better at lunging and feeding off of my energy and my body language. And it really is the magic I was looking for was in the work that I didn't want to do. And we've just come a long way. He also talks about the self-consistency theory, which is the theory that we act consistent to our self-image. So if you don't see yourself as successful, then your chances of succeeding are diminished. So when good things happen to you, you discount them. You say it was just luck. I'm not that talented. But all you're doing is getting in your own way. So you need to know what your self-defeating thoughts and behaviors are because those are going to undermine your performance. He goes into detail into what these are in the book, but they include fear, anger, anxiety, self-consciousness, perfectionism, stubbornism, lack of motivation, competitiveness, distractions, and persistence. So you need to look at that book, figure out what yours are, identify your demons, and start learning on how to overcome them. Kind of along the same line, he talks about cognitive dissonance, which is the uncomfortable psychological state that arises when how you see yourself and what is really happening come into conflict. So most athletes experience this at one point, and some of them are going to revert to their comfort zones. So think about if you're competing against professionals or you're moving up a level, you're going to say, why me? I'm not talented enough to compete against them. And all it's going to do is hold you back. But why not you? They were also in your shoes at one point. They didn't know how to ride at one point. But only you can limit yourself, and you have to be willing to take the risk because you never know. You may outperform your self-image. You may outperform those professionals on that particular day. But you'll never know if you don't try. Another psychological term is self-efficacy, which is the belief in one's own ability to be successful. So simply believing in yourself doesn't mean that you're going to win, but believing in yourself can help enable you to put yourself into a position to win. Finally, he doesn't necessarily talk about meditation, but I can't help but think that it might help. It's basically just a practice that brings awareness to your thoughts. And so once you're aware of your thoughts, you can change or stop them. There's multiple different meditation practices. Some of them are getting rid of the thoughts. So you have to be able to recognize when there are thoughts in your head and put them out, focus on your body or your word, whatever. And then there's other meditation practices where you follow those thoughts. You let your mind wander and just be aware of those thoughts and where it's taking you. Either way, it's going to bring that awareness to your thoughts, and then you can either shut them off, follow them, or turn the focus inward. And all of that is kind of these tools that he's telling you and what you need to be able to do. So I think it would be helpful. But again, he doesn't really mention it. The final thing I wanted to touch on more in depth was routine, which we talked a little bit about earlier, but I wanted to really dive into it here. And he has this quote in the book that says, "The habits of success are forged in practice. In practice, you learn the art of concentration. The conscious practice of routines leads to the unconscious habits of success. A routine is something you do regularly that you can control and has a purpose. Athletes' routines are the same in practice as in game day. Routines are comforting mechanisms, triggering mechanisms." So having the same routine before you ride at home and when you go to a show will be helpful not only to you, but to your horse. So even though the environment has changed, the horse knows what to expect from you and what you're going to be doing next. This is also controlling what you can and making the same warm up every time. It's not going to be exactly the same because you're in a new arena, new environment. There's other people riding around, different times and you're going to be showing sometimes multiple times a day. But control what you can, make the routine exactly the same as much as you can. If you look at any professional athlete, they're going to use this warm-up routine to transform them into a warrior. So using headphones, sunglasses, and music to insulate you from the outside world. And it'll also help you either energize or calm yourself down, whichever one you need, like we talked about in Knowing Your Numbers. If you watch the quarterback documentary on Netflix, Patrick Mahomes goes into detail about his game day routine. And it's very regimented and the same every single day from the moment he wakes up until kickoff, even down to listening to the same song, which also Michael Phelps talks about too. He's very known for having a very specific and consistent routine, so much so that him and his coach didn't even need to talk when they were at meets. They just knew what each other was going to do. His coach would use different whistle signals to communicate if he was on pace or needed to slow down, speed up. So they didn't even need to talk. And even afterwards, after the race, they had a cool down and recovery routine because he would have another race that same day. I think a lot of people think that athletes have these routines because they're superstitious, and maybe some of them are, and that's part of the purpose. But I think most of it is warming up the mind and body to get them to their peak performance and in sync. And all these unconscious habits and controlling what you can control. But once your body goes through these routines, it knows what to do and how to perform next. It's just a normal routine and your body's going to just automatically go to those successful movements. Now, he does talk in this book about not letting activities, people, or the hustle and bustle of life throw you off your track and your goals and what you want your end goal to be. But my next episode is going to be on the book Essentialism, which will dive into this exact subject in much more depth. So I'm not going to go into it much here, but he does have a whole chapter on focusing your time and energy on your own dreams and not the fatal distractions of life. So in conclusion, in order to have a strong mental game, I think you need to have confidence, which comes from knowing that you're mentally and physically prepared. And the confidence will keep the fear at bay, which will only empower your horse. And once your horse is empowered and comfortable, that lets you focus on the task at hand. So to get this strong mental game, you need to know your mind, be able to self-evaluate, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and then experiment with solutions in order to control your emotions and establish your warm-up routine, use visualization for show day, but also to see your end goal and then set goals to achieve that end goal. And then in the end, you just have to trust that your preparation was done and that it got you to where you are and will propel you as far as you want to go. So I will see you next time where, like I said, we will be talking about Essentialism, which is a book by Greg McKeown.